This is the story of the jungle. Yes, there is a jungle out there. I grew up in one jungle in Liberia, West Africa, and immigrated to another jungle in the United States. So what's new about that? A jungle is a real-life situation, and it could be also a metaphor place in which your talent kind of faces your passion, okay? And to get through this jungle, sometimes you really have to garner inner and external strength to be able to get through the jungle. So come along with me now to Liberia, West Africa, where I would take you into this jungle of my first experience with the physical jungle. So this is in a West African country, a tropical region. For some of you who don't know, is average temperature around probably, I would say, 85 to 90 degrees temperature. And we are going to experience the physical jungle for the first time as a youth. So I've gotten permission from my parents for us to get into the jungle. We are going to hunt for possum. Now, don't panic, because some of you probably wouldn't know how to pick your food from Sandex or Pick and Save. However, if you live in this jungle where I grew up in, you have to learn how to navigate the soil and how to interact with the jungle in order to be able to live in that setting. So I'm a young gentleman, and I have gotten permission from my mom to go along with my older brothers into this physical jungle. And we get some preparation. One of the first things to understand, if you go in this physical jungle, you have to understand the habitat. You have to understand some of the characteristics of these animals and how they live and how they interact. So you have to understand their behavior, literally. Possums are very tricky animals. In fact, they could play dead sometimes for almost 4 hours of a time so that you don't know whether they are dead. They live in these termite mounds. And what they do is that they build all these holes and bring their food back in there. And they could also stretch their holes, their escape route several yards away from the main mound. So my brothers and myself get into this jungle, and we settle around and we decide, okay, there should be some of these guys in this termite mound. And they all take up their different stations. My oldest brother take up the main hole, and my other two brothers are stationed at different sites. I'm stationed at one site that they deem not to be too much of a risky route where the possum will come to escape. Well, that assumption was quite wrong. That assumption happened to be the escape route for the first possum. And so I'm in the jungle, ladies and gentlemen, and within the jungle, there are many other things happening in the jungle, okay? And so I get distracted by a group of parrots, African parrots singing overhead, blowing whistles back to one another, and I began to blow whistles back to them too, you know, because I thought it was kind of cute. And we began to exchange these whistles back and forth. And this took roughly around good 20 minutes or so, and guess what happened? A big old possum came and billowed out from in my hole and began to run in the bush. And I tried to make up by chasing it with my machete, but it was too late, and the possum got away. So I've created a whole scene at this time. My brothers are saying, what the heck did you just do? Mom is not going to be happy. We're not going to get dinner home. So they leave their holes and they come to mine for more supervision, okay? And at this time, what happened was not a pretty process because two other possums come from their holes and run in the bush, all right? So I caused all of this chaos in the bush as a young kid, right? And the sun is beginning to settle. My mom had given strict instruction that we all need to get home early enough because she didn't want us hanging in the bush in the dark. And this was a fascinating process. We get back home, everybody's all kind of putting every blame on me that I caused all the trouble, and there's no dinner for tonight. And I'm like, okay, guys, why are you guys causing all this noise about? Because for me, all I wanted to do was to experience that whole relationship with my older brothers and to hang in the bush. That's all I wanted to do, and experience that whole setting. So I didn't know what all the cons was about. But there's a couple of stories here. One is that my distraction led to some ripple effect whereby everybody began to have this same kind of process whereby I didn't bring dinner to the table for everybody to eat, right? The other experience is that you probably don't want to, that they learn early, the Buseh family learn early, don't send Aaron in the bush to go hunting for animals because he's very likely to let loose all of those animals in the bush. In fact, I was notorious sometimes opening the chicken coop to let out the roosters because I thought they were kind of having nice feathers and my mom should not kill them, for dinner. So that was some of the stuff that happened. Fast forward, I found myself coming to the United States in another jungle. And I would call this the academic jungle. I arrived through the John F. Kennedy International Airport, one of those large airports. Remember now, I grew up in that village in Belefanai, that small town, and I found myself, in New York City. And then I board another plane, and I get into a Midwestern university that had about 25,000 students, all right? I went to school at a liberal arts university in Liberia that had only 1,000 students. And I'm coming to one that has about 25,000 students. I remember vividly when I woke up that morning and looked at the sea of students downstairs all running, trying to find their classes. Some of you guys are students. You know what happened with the freshmen on the first day of class. Everybody is scrambling around trying to find out which hall is this hall, which hall is this hall, right? And I was in the same position. In fact, I began asking for my hall where to go, and nobody could tell me where to go. So that was one very interesting introduction. The other funny thing that happened, or very interesting thing that happened, is that my average temperature where I grew up is around 85, 90 degrees. At this time, it's late September, and the temperature had dropped to like maybe in the 40s or so. I flew in with no jacket, no winter jacket, no winter coat. And I remember going to class that day, and one of my classmates said to me, "Man, do you have a jacket?" I said, "No." He said, "You're going to die, man. You're going to freeze your butt to death," is what he said to me. I still remember that very well. And I was like, what is this guy talking about, Anyway, fast forward, I get through this academic graduate school, complete my doctorate degree, and I said, well, I have a PhD, so I think I can go on now and apply for a faculty position. I want to be a professor. Okay, I love teaching. If some of you guys don't know, I really love teaching. That's one of my passions. And so what happens is that I get tossed into teaching a very large undergraduate class in the healthcare system, about the healthcare system. Now, everybody in the United States has some kind of perspective on how the healthcare system should function, and everybody has some kind of perspective on how functional it should be, and what is happening and what is not happening. So whenever you teach public policy, especially healthcare policy, you are walking into almost like a lion's den, if you want to call it that, because people are not going to agree on anything in that class. So you, the professor, will have to keep saying, "I'm the prof, this is what I say. I'm the prof, this is what I say." Well, within the academic jungle that day, the first class was made up of 200 students plus, I remember. And I was walking in there. I will tell you this much. For those of you who are going to go further to get your doctorate, there's no training in your PhD program that teaches you on how to manage a group of students of 200, 300 students. No training whatsoever, all right? So I was literally tossed into that other jungle and said, "Go teach. You got a PhD, go teach." And I walk in there to teach, and I'm walking in the hall, and I'm seeing a lot of kids around in the hallway. Some students are, in fact, kind of like kissing one another, getting in the hall. There are some students, on their laptop. There are some on their phones. There are some sitting in the lecture hall with their feet all high up on the back of the chair like they're in their living rooms, all right? And I began to even reflect back on my physical jungle or my jungle in my birth country, whereby we have something called an open market, whereby you get in this open market, and what you see happening is that everybody is kind of screaming at you and say, "Come buy my fish, come and buy my fish," And I began to reflect on this whole process. I tried to turn on my computer, And all of a sudden, it won't work. And I remarked to myself, and I said, oh, God, I'm dead. These kids are going to eat me up raw. They are going to eat me up raw if this stuff doesn't work today. Because guess what? There were a bunch of students kind of watching my every move, man, just looking at me. Who is this guy, Who is this guy? What is he going to tell us today, And I'm like, okay, guys, you guys don't know that I, too, am equally nervous just like you are nervous, okay? So just calm down and things will be fine. We move on, and I begin the class, and I said, okay, I think I can garner some inner strength here, and I can do this stuff. And the computer begins to work. And so I began doing my lecturing. One of the things you have to understand is that teaching is just a piece of the puzzle of a professor, all right? For those of you who want to follow my path, and I keep pushing my students to follow my path, teaching is just one piece. If you look at this slide that I created here, it was, in fact, clutter, and I took some out from there. But what you got happening in this jungle, in this academic jungle, as a professor, is research, service, knowledge creation, publication, mentoring, advising, peer evaluation. And I would tell you this much, that sometimes the academic jungle can even be more brutal than the physical jungle. Okay, it is literally a hierarchical system in which sometimes if you are not very careful, or if you don't succeed in there, you could literally be smoked out, just like how we smoke the possums out, okay? So what you got happening here is that within this academic jungle, there's so much evaluation, both internal and external evaluation. Constantly, you are constantly being evaluated by your peers, both internally and externally. And I say from time to time, have you thought of any, specific differences between the physical jungle and the academic jungle in which they both kind of mimic each other in the first place? Have you thought about a situation whereby in the academic jungle, people sit around the table to decide the fate of their colleagues? Have you thought what happened in the physical jungle in which a group of animals sit around and decide who comes in our pact and who are we going to let in? I think there are some similarities. So how do I survive all of this process? I have my own laws that I tend to follow. And I hope that you too will take some of these laws and use them during whatever jungle that you find yourself in. So the first one is, be ready for persistent change. Yes, the jungle changes all the time. The jungle is not static, okay? So you could go in the jungle, the physical jungle, and you could be coming back out, and you could walk into a group of elephants on the road. You can't go and just plow in and tell those elephants, hey, can you guys get out of the way? I need to get out of the jungle. You can't try that kind of scenario. You'll get eaten up by those elephants, or they'll stumble on you and kill you. So you have to be ready for persistent change. In fact, what you would do in that physical jungle is to probably go around and get another path. But what I would suggest is that when you're going through this kind of situation, you have to be able to do it with some wisdom and resilience. You have to be able to use wisdom and resilience as you go through this persistent change. Same thing goes in the academic jungle. If you are going on to become an assistant professor, or for you students here today, if nursing doesn't work for you, since I'm a professor in nursing, I always say it, there are other healthcare disciplines. Come talk to me. We will work it out. We'll figure something out, But you can always have to have a plan B to get out of the jungle. Be engaged and connected through your service and teamwork. Of course, yes. The sooner we can learn that we are all interconnected and that we are interdependent, the better world that we'll be able to live in. In fact, there is an African parable that says, if you want to go fast, then go alone. But if you want to go far, then travel together in a group. And that's very important to understand this whole process. We know that those animals that go together and hunt together, and I'm not sure how many of you have been in the real physical jungle, but if you take a look at what happens on National Geographic, for instance, and you take a look at some of the issues of the African wild dogs, or even the hyenas, they go after they are killed in a group, and they are better able to sustain themselves. Those animals tend to live longer because they protect each other, and they tend to bring down bigger animals. Same thing goes in the academic jungle. In the academic jungle, nowadays, there's this whole promotion of team science in research, and that you alone Although you are not going to be evaluated on what you publish and what you do, but you also need to what? Showcase that you can cross over into psychology. You can cross over into anthropology and other disciplines, and even engineering, and be able to bring that whole process together. So that's the approach that needs to be embraced. The third law that I have here is never be in fear. Always be in control of your thoughts and your emotion. Ladies and gentlemen, the jungle can smell the fear in you. If you are fearful, the jungle is going to eat you up. Literally, in the physical jungle, if you are so fearful, you would not know which route to take, and you will end up walking into a bunch of animals that will eat you up. If you are somebody who is an assistant professor and trying to make tenure, and you can't show to your colleagues that you can survive in this academic jungle, you may end up being also smoked out like how we smoke the possums out from their holes. And you'll not be able to survive the process. You always have to be able to move those negative thoughts back into a positive reign. That's the critical thing to remember. Always move those negative thoughts back into a positive reign. And if you have somebody nearby that have gone through that experience before, ask them for assistance. The fourth law here is be in remembrance of your roots and your past. This law is very passionate to me. This is one of the best laws I think that I have survived by. I will tell you this much. All of those PhDs and master's degrees and all those alphabet soup after my name do not make who Aaron Buseh is today. What makes me today is what I got from my elders in that village when I grew up in that village. My sense of integrity, my sense of honesty and hard working, okay? My sense of collectiveness. All of those were born early on before I entered into undergraduate school. We don't teach that stuff in graduate school, okay? And so I would tell you this much, that I have been able to survive basically because of that. I'm a man who lives in two worlds, basically. You can hear my accent. I don't hide. I tell everybody I grew up in Liberia and I immigrated to the United States. Last summer, when the Ebola outbreak took place in West Africa, and Liberia was one of those epic centers, I came close to quitting my position here at the university and returning home to help my people. I happened to be at an internship at the National Institutes of Health at the time. And I would come back home, turn the television on, and all I would see was all agony and people dying. And I would say to myself, who's helping these folks? Who's helping these people? What the heck am I doing here in the first place? But I reached deeper into myself and I said, I remember that my elders told me that during times of despair, you have to be able to think strongly and you have to be able to notice what you can do best at that time. So what I did basically was to say, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to make sure that I write and advocate for my people. Guess what? Fox, NPR, all the news stations were calling me. Somebody told me I was from Liberia, and I did research on infectious diseases, and I kept being called to come over. So regardless of what jungle you find yourself in, ladies and gentlemen, it's always important to understand the laws of the jungle. If you understand the laws of the jungle, you will be able to get through this whole process. The jungle teaches us to take this quantum leap in life. Look what happened to me. There is a jungle out there.